Maserati has been around since 1914, and I don't think any one of the founding brothers of Maserati were expecting Maserati to ever build this type of package when it comes to their cars. The SUVs, the Levante, and now we have this Maserati Grecale, and this is for sale right here at Maserati Denver. If you're interested in this, I'm gonna link this down in the description. So what we're gonna do in this video is we're gonna have a look at this design because I think it looks so much different from the Levante. This has more of an Italian flair to it and a lot more similar to the MC20, the new Gran Turismo, for example. So we're gonna have a look at this front end. We are gonna make some changes to the front end design. I'm gonna let you know about that in just a minute. Have a look at the side view, the rear, the interior, and then we're gonna take this for a drive.
Let's have a look at some of the basic spec and tech of the 2023 Maserati Grecale Modena. We have a 2-liter turbo inline 4, putting out 325 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque, connected to an 8-speed automatic. You have all-wheel drive. 0 to 60 is done in 4.9 seconds. Fuel economy comes in at 22 city, 29 highway, and the price for this one is $87,800.
You know what I like the most about the front end of this Maserati Grecale is that if you look at it, it has almost a friendly face. There's no aggressiveness in here, and it still looks very beautiful. And that's what I'm saying when I say you don't need to have every single car today look super angry and aggressive like we have in the Yaris. Toyota Yaris look aggressive today, which I don't understand why. You can still make a beautiful design, and this is a great example of that without it being aggressive. So have a look at these headlights here and how they have this Italian styling to it because it stretches up onto the fender itself. We do have some LEDs in here. The daytime run light and the indicators are the same LEDs, separated by this point up here, this line, and then you have this line at the bottom. A couple of changes I want to do to the LEDs itself, in addition to some changes to the vents as well in the lower section, which we're going to talk about in just a second. Before we go in and talk about the redesigns here that's going to happen in the front end, can we just take a moment and appreciate the styling that Maserati is doing right now? I think probably, if I think about it, Ferrari has gone away a little bit from this elegant styling that we have in Italian exotics, and so has Lamborghini. Has never really been that because they have super chisel and sharp designs. I think Maserati is probably the last brand to have this fluid motion, soft surfaces in combination with some very sharp lines to separate, to define the graphics in their cars. And this Grecale has those lines and those philosophies as well. This is the Modena trim. So you have 3 different trim levels. You have the GT, you have the Modena, and then you have this the top of the line Trofeo. This sits right in the middle. So having a look at the front end and what's going on here in the grille, I love the design of these grills because this concave feeling that we have in the bars that go in the grill, and it's all open, so all the air is just being flooded into the front end. Massive Maserati logo. It's not just massive in its size, it's also the thickness of this thing. It's super thick. Then you have the camera up here, and you have functional air vents at the bottom. You also have these corner intakes being completely functional. You can see the radiators on both sides. You know, now that I think about it, there is actually one car, one small SUV that looks very similar to this, and it's not the one you expect. I think this looks very similar to the new Ford Puma, which is not sold here in the US. It's sold over in Europe, but it still has this friendly design to it, and they look very similar when you compare the two. Both have this friendly elegance to them, but still look beautiful in the front end. So what I want to do here in this redesign is have a look at these side intakes here. I think these sit too high, so I want to cut them, bring them down a little bit, not have them be almost like a less dynamic feeling because they're almost like a full square. It's the same length here like we have here. I want to have them be squished a little bit and stretched out horizontally, which means that we're going to have to lower this section. In addition to that, the base of this feels a little undefined. I want to have a stronger base on the design of this intake specifically right here. So I want to create a much sharper line at the bottom here. Moving on to the center intake, I do feel like this corner is a little too sharp for me. I want to soften that up and have more of a smooth radius into that design, into that specific housing for the lower section. But other than that, I just think this is a stunning small SUV, and this goes to show that small SUVs, crossovers, whatever you want to call this, they don't have to be ugly and lack any sort of styling, because we can still have that Italian Maserati flair in this type of package. I also like that they still have this little indent here pointing to the Trident logo in the middle. Coming around to the beautiful side view of the Grecale, and just have a look at this beautiful Italian volumes that we have here. We don't even have a sharp shoulder line. We don't even have a sharp line over the fenders. I kinda wish we did. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to experiment with that and see if I prefer having it be smooth like this or a little sharper like we have in the new Gran Turismo, for example. But this smoothness that we have here reminds me a little bit, the proportions, it's smaller than a Macan, but this surface here reminds me of the Macan in some ways. The wheels and tire setup, we have pretty beefy tires right here in the rear end. We have 295 wide tires with 20s. You can get this with the 21-inch optional wheels, which is something that I would obviously go for because we still have plenty of rubber on the 21-inch wheels, and they also fill out the wheel houses a lot more better than what we have here. This is probably a little bit more comfortable, but I don't care about that. What I do like about these wheels though are the design, because we sort of have this Trident logo in the spoke design themselves. And you also have this red calipers in combination with this slightly blue tone that we have on the exterior color. I think it's a really good spec, this thing. And have a look at this line at the bottom, just one single line that carves out some of that volume and creates a more planted look of this car when you look at this from a side view. All the graphics, as you can see, are blacked out. There is no chrome on here. We do have some polished aluminum here for the door handles. These are actually not the door handles. You can't pull this out. There's a button underneath here, so when you stick your finger under here and just press the button, that's how you open up the doors. Now, there are still some things that I would change on the side view here. It's not going to be a redesign, but just to make these typical 3 Maserati graphics right here in the front fender, I want to have them be functional. I don't think that would be too much to ask, because all you got to do, make a hole in the fender and just have this be the honeycomb be hollow, so you can have some warm air from the engine bay flow out here. I don't think that would be too much to ask from an engineering standpoint. It would also look a lot better. And then we have this polished aluminum up top here as well. I do love the Modena font that we have here. Typical stylish handwritten Modena font that looks fantastic and is also of course blacked out like the Trident logo we have on the C-pillar. Let's focus on this area in the back. This is where it gets maybe a little confusing to me, just having it look from the exact perspective you're seeing it right now. I do love that we have the Maserati logo here blacked out, typical style for Maserati to have them. I also like that these are not matte black, instead it's body colored all the way around, making it feel more sporty and also brings the volume closer to the ground. However, this line right here and the combination with the taillights, it reminds me a little bit maybe Audi Q8 style, and it also feels, I'm not sure which car I'm thinking of, I'm gonna have to look that up. It's pretty hard to make it unique in this specific area, but I think they did a good job because of the surfacing that we have. It's very smooth surfacing that's lacking any sort of sharp lines over the fenders. So still very nicely done in this area by Maserati, even though it reminds me of a lot of other cars in this specific segment. So coming around to the 3/4 rear view, we do have the full LED taillights here, which I think looks beautiful. I like that it slopes down here, have this curvature to it. You also have some dynamic feeling in this. I think dynamic feelings in the LEDs, in the taillights, in the front and the rear. That's what I'm saying. We have it in the rear here, but we don't have it in the front end, because as you saw, the headlights are very static when it comes to the LEDs. They have the same thickness all around, and that's what I want to change, part of the redesign that we did in the front end. I also want to remove this thing, because in this price range, come on Maserati, just make this a little bigger. It will benefit you in 2 different ways. If you make this roof spoiler a little longer, it looks a lot better, because this is a very sporty SUV, so it's going to have a bigger spoiler up top, and it's also going to give you space to hide this little thing underneath here and clean this area up. But other than that, I think it's a beautiful design. So let's talk a little bit about the line flow and the graphics of the rear end of the Maserati Grecale. So the same type of style that we have in the front and the side actually comes back here in the rear end, and that's what Maserati does so well, is have this combination of very soft, smooth lines, Italian flair to their designs, in combination with a couple of sharp lines to define some key points of the graphics. You have one of those lines right here, then you have another one down here at the trunk, and you also have this housing for where you have the license plate in, looking very nice. Another detail I love in the rear end is that they have this little angle down, this triangle, this peak of the graphics in the middle, like we have in the front end grille. It comes back in this brushed aluminum trim piece right here. So we have some connection to the graphics in the front end here in the rear. Then you have this chrome or aluminum Maserati logo down here or up here. I do kind of want to have that be in black, and also in addition to all the other logos and labels that we have in the back, because everything else, the side logos, for example, the Modena trim, the stamped out Modena text on the side, and you have the trident on the side, they're all black, but then it comes back in silver in the back. It just doesn't really work for me. Now, as we move down to the very bottom of the Grecale, and this is where it becomes proper Maserati when you look at this diffuser here, because this is a pretty aggressive diffuser. It does have some fins to it. It's all gloss black, and then it houses these very nice tailpipes. So quad tailpipes for the Grecale in the Modena trim. Looks fantastic. They're also gloss black. I do like that we don't have these in chrome, because this being the sportier SUV, just feels right to have them be in black. Overall, a very elegant and very Maserati design. It's not easy turning a brand that's been doing sports cars and sports sedans for so long, turn that philosophy into this type of package like Maserati has done with the Grecale. Welcome to the beautiful interior of the brand new Maserati Grecale Modena. I love the Bianco Astro exterior color with this beautiful red, almost blood red interior that we have here. What are we talking about? Connectivity and displays here. So we have two 12.3-inch digital displays, one for the top part of the infotainment screen, and then you have another one for the actual gauge cluster. Then you have a third display down here for the important settings, such as the climate control, being an 8.8-inch display. So let's fire this up. And the thing is, it took me a while to find the start button here, because I was looking here, press this thing. This is the on and off for the infotainment screen. I looked here, this is just a Maserati label. So I thought, where is the start button? And it's actually located right here on the wheel. But the thing is, when the car is turned off, it's just a black empty button with some trim around it. So I was just pressing all kinds of buttons, but it is actually this button at the lower section on the left-hand side of the steering wheel. Firing this up, and it sounds really good. Even though it is just a 4-cylinder, this thing, it still sounds decent for what it is. Up top, let's start up here and move our way down and then into the gauge cluster before we have a look at the rest of the interior. I do love this clock that we have up here. Very classy. However, it is all digital. So this is actually a rounded display that you have up top. You can change the clock settings or what you want it to show. You can have it be more of a classic look. You can have the sport look. You can have the design. Or you can even have it be a G meter. So press the G meter down here, and now when you take this to the track or up in the mountains, you can see how much G's you're pulling back, forth, left, and right, which is really cool to have. Or you can even have it be a compass. Or if you want a more F1 style, you just press the pedals and you see how hard you're pressing the brake or how hard you're pressing the throttle with this power to brake ratio that we have in this display. Fun stuff like that makes it feel a little more special. You're probably never gonna use those things, but it's just one of those fun touches that they add in cars like this. So further down, we do have some vents looking very normal, integrated nicely here with a big flap to just adjust where you want the air to come out from. You can also see clearly where the vents are angled because you see the fins in there, so perfectly done. And then this trim continues into the side and along the whole side of the car into the passenger air vent on the right side over there. Moving further down, this is actually a Uconnect 5 system, so this is available in a lot of other cars. And the thing is, some people are gonna complain and say, why would they put a Uconnect system in a Maserati? It doesn't make sense at all. The thing is, if we want to keep cars like this in production, we're going to see probably more collaborations between car brands and how they implement each other's technology into their cars and also into the platforms of cars moving forward. And I don't mind that at all. I think it's a good idea because otherwise this would first of all be a lot more expensive, and who knows if it would even exist if we had a native system for Maserati. This works really good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this. It's very intuitive to use, super easy. You have the phone settings here, connectivity, go to home. You have the coolest setting, which is the vehicle settings, and you also have the front end. This is attention to detail. Even though it is a Uconnect system, you still have Maserati's attention to detail in the software itself, because if you click on vehicle, the icon for the vehicle itself is actually a small little Maserati Grecale front end. So in here you can check out the performance, the oil pressure, the turbo, the torque. You can have an electric vehicle and see what's going on here. The power delivery, you have the x-ray view of the car here with the setup for the drivetrain looking very nice. The graphics look fantastic. And if you go to my car, you have overview, tire pressure, oil temp, and drive mode explorer. So it means that you have 3 different drive modes. You have comfort, you have GT, and then you have sport. Obviously you need to have a sport setting in a Maserati at all times. It doesn't matter what type of package it is. Moving further down, you have the gear selector here. So these are just regular buttons in the dash itself. You have drive on the right side, you have neutral, reverse, and when you press reverse, obviously you're gonna get the 360 camera here. You're also gonna get the regular reverse camera. Not the best resolution, but as always, you're gonna see the big obstacles that you're gonna have to avoid. You can also get it in a more fisheye view if you want to. You have the front-mounted camera, and you have the fisheye for the front-mounted camera, and all of this is in addition to the top view 360 camera that we have on the left side. Now moving further down, and this is what I like about this Uconnect system, I think this works so much better, for example, than the iDrive 8 that we have in BMWs, where you have to go in and then it's very messy, the climate settings for BMW, the iDrive 8 system. This I prefer a lot more, because this is always gonna be here. So it is almost like you have a separate section down here with the physical buttons and dials for the climate control, although these are all digital back here, down here, but they're still gonna be here no matter what you do in the top screen. And it's super easy to adjust the temp here. You have heated and ventilated seats in 3 different settings. You also have the heated steering wheel settings right here, and where you want the air to blow out from. So it's super easy to use this thing, and pretty intuitive. When you're driving, you just have to glance real quick exactly what it is you're touching without having to go into a different type of menu in the software itself, since it's always available here. You also have the hill descent control, you have the parking assist, and the automatic on and off shut off for the engine. So let's turn that off. And you have the volume control buttons right here on the right side of the screen. So overall, for having everything be digital, this is probably one of the best integrations I've seen, this Uconnect 5 system, to have it in this specific setup. Further down, underneath this screen, which by the way, I think is decently integrated in the overall design, because it has this curvature to it here, so it curves right in the middle. This lower screen is gonna have a little bit more glare to it since it's facing more upwards, but that's totally fine. Underneath this screen, you do have the wireless charging pad right here, and you also have this little section in the middle, which is a bit of a storage compartment with 2 USBs, a regular USB, and you also have a USB-C. Let's close this down, this piano black style finish that we have in this center console, in addition to 2 big cup holders right behind this storage compartment. Moving further down, you do have a leather wrapped armrest, looking nice. I do like the stitching that we have here, even though it's the same color as the red. I think it looks good to have red stitching on the red leather itself. I don't think I want to have it be contrasting in this case, which I normally do. It still looks good. Under here we do have a 12-volt outlet and some more storage compartment, looking pretty standard for this type of vehicle. Moving on to these seats, I mean, I love the color, the spec of this thing. With, as I said, the Bianco Astro exterior and this gorgeous red interior, the seats look more angled towards the comfort side, I would say. They still have plenty of bolstering on the side, so you do have that sporty feel, and you also have the embossed Maserati trident right here in the headrest. This is a feature I just want to touch and roll my fingers over, because it's so beautifully done to have special treatments like this for these special cars. Moving on to the door panel, same type of leather treatment, and you have the piano black and the black leather up top. Moving down to the red leather in the middle with some nice 3-row of stitches into the Sonus Faber sound system. I don't think I've ever heard that name before. I'm not an audiophile, so I'm not up to date when it comes to all these brands that they put in the cars, but I assume it's a pretty decent sound system. The integration of the speaker itself could have been done maybe a little better than this, because now it just looks like a panel on top of this red leather. But it is a very functional and easy to figure out door. You don't have any traditional door handles. Instead, you have this button here, which is going to be located exactly where you have your thumb when you put your hand in the door itself. And then you just press this button, and that's how easily you open the doors. Looking up top, we do have a full panoramic sunroof, and this thing actually has a separation right in the middle of it, so you have a bar going across the entire window, which is totally fine. As you know, I like to pretty much always have these closed anyway, specifically these days when we have everything digital here on screens to have less glare. Just always like to keep that closed, but it is a cool feature. Looking at this steering wheel, this feels Italian exotic to me, this steering wheel, or it feels special, this steering wheel, because we have the drive mode selector right here. Going from comfort to GT to sport, it also changes the layout of the gauge cluster, obviously, when you do that. Click the button in the middle and you get the suspension settings. If you want the suspension to be in the sport setting or in the normal setting. I'm gonna go to sport in the drive mode and sport for the suspensions when we take this for a drive. Overall, very nice, small, pretty thin steering wheel, but it feels nice to hold. It's all leather wrapped. You have the piano black going here. All the controls for the lane keep assist, the cruise control are all located right here on the right side of the steering wheel. On the left side, you have the controls for configuring the actual layout of this 12.3-inch gauge cluster, which is fantastic. That's exactly what you want when you have a fully digital display like this. The whole point of it is to customize it exactly like you want to have it. So you can have classic, evolved, which goes into a little bit more sporty design, or you can have it being relaxed, which removes a lot of that tachometer and speedometer feel and just gives it more of a consumer electronics layout. I'm gonna keep it in classic because I think this looks very classic and it looks good. Now we do have a head-up display here, and you can adjust that in here as well. So you just click this button right here on the left side and you go to head-up display. You can have it be on and off, in addition to the housing for the gauge cluster. So you have a nice traditional classic, again, looking housing for the gauge cluster, and you have a, in this case, when I have it in classic, the speedometer tachometer look almost analog with the layout that we have here. So very well done with this interior, Maserati. You've stepped it up so much the last, I would say, 10-15 years when it comes to the interior designs of their cars. Last but not least, what about the glove box in this thing? Let's have a look. Let's open this up, and it is pretty small actually for this type of size of SUV, but at least we do have one right there. So with that said, we talked about the front end of the interior. Let's jump into the bag and see if I can fit behind my own driving position. Okay, jumping into the back seat of the Grecale Modena. And even with this beautiful, elegant, graceful Italian exotic styling, I still have plenty of headroom back here. I also have a lot of legroom. Very surprising, because this is not really a big SUV. You also have this pocket here, which is nicely designed. It's not just a cheap net. Back here, you don't have 3-zone climate control, but you do have some vents back here, and you have 2 USBs, one regular and one USB-C. Folding down this middle section is going to reveal 2 cup holders housed in this same color of hard plastic that we have on the leather. Very interesting. And fold that back up. Overall, plenty of space back here, more than I was expecting, and it's a really clean place to sit in for a pretty long road trip. It's about that time, guys. We're taking the 2023 Maserati Grecale Modena on a drive. What do we have out of the hood? Let me show you first the sticker down here, so you can freeze this if you want to have all the information about this vehicle. I think you can freeze it right there, would be good before you set off on this drive. So under the hood, we do have an inline-4 turbocharged with a hybrid setup for this car, and that's it's a 4-cylinder, 2-liter, but it does have a turbo, and it puts out 325 horsepower. 0 to 60 in this thing, just under 5 seconds, 4.9 seconds, something like that. And you also have all-wheel drive connected to an 8-speed automatic transmission, and I have it, as I said I would, in the most sporty settings, which are sport for the drive mode and sport for the suspension as well. So let's put it in manual here, and let's just see what's going on with this shift pedals and see how well these pedals work when you use them in manual mode. So here we go. Wow, do you hear the rally noise in the exhaust? It sounds great. I know it's just a 4-cylinder, but this is what we gotta do these days. Manufacturers are probably, especially Maserati, are probably a little bummed that they can't really make V8 in every single model that they have right now. Instead, we have this turbo inline 4, which does have a, as I said, a mild hybrid on it. So we still have plenty of power. 325 horsepower is not that bad. So we're at a red light right now, and once it goes green, you know what we're gonna do. All right, here we go. It sounds good. Sounds like an old rally car with its rumbles in the back when you're when you're shifting. It's a fun car to drive. It feels tight. Suspension feels tight, which it should be in sport when you have the drive and the suspension in sport. These paddles, they are mounted to the column. Now that I've driven a lot of cars with paddles, I think I prefer them to be actually mounted on the follow the steering wheel. For the simple reason that I always know where they are, but you also always know where they are when you have them mounted like this. But at least when you have them mounted like this, one important thing is you need to have them be big enough so that you don't have to like fiddle around and figure out where is it exactly when you're turning. And these are absolutely huge, these pedals. I love the design of these. They have a nice click to them. Maybe a little long of a play in the click itself. I would rather have it be a shorter, tighter click. But again, it's very easy to find where the pedals are here. And I do love this head-up display. It just looks great having the map in the head-up display itself. Oh yeah. Maserati is doing what they can with a 4-cylinder engine. It still feels and sounds like something. It doesn't sound like your average 4-cylinder, and that would be a shame if it actually came out sounding like that. This sounds really good. Listen to those downshifts. We do have a tunnel here, so let's... Oh, that's the passenger side. I want to be the front, obviously my driver's side. Let's see if we can get some nice noises in here. Sounds good. It is a very cool car, this thing. Price, I think the base price is around $74,000 for the Modena package. This is 80 plus. And it is a fun car to drive. It's funny how they, these days, they just manage to make SUVs so much fun to drive. I have to give credit to Maserati for this interior. I love the layout here. I especially love this analog-looking classic Maserati clock that we have here in the center. This is one piece that I probably would never touch. I would always have it in this gorgeous classic layout that we have here. I don't care about the G meters, the brake and power ratio, graphics and whatever you have there. This is what I want. I would actually prefer to have this be an analog piece, just a beautiful watch and not just a display like this. But that's just my opinion. Otherwise, the interior here with this Uconnect 5 system, it's a great system. And it's also a lot better integrated than what you have in other cars that everybody these days seems to have, you know, digital gauge clusters and digital infotainment screens. That's just the way we're going in that direction. But you can make them, the integration matters even more when you have a layout like this. And Maserati just nailed the interior of this design. If you're gonna get yourself a small SUV like this, why not get something fun like this? You can even go with the base GT model. It's probably still gonna be a lot of fun to drive, just like this is. Overall, well done, Maserati, turning your cars into first the Levante back in 2017, and now you have the Grecale as well. Two SUVs, beautifully done. They're still fun to drive, and this is what you got to do if you want to keep making the sports cars that Maserati is making. You need to have cars like this that are actually bringing in the money to be able to develop those type of cars. Big thanks to Maserati of Denver right here in Colorado. If you're interested in this car, or if you're interested in any of their inventory, they have a massive selection of very special cars. They even have a Gran Turismo here right now. I'm gonna link that down in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.